The night was restless, the city's heartbeat pounding louder than sleep. Sirens pierced through the silence, flashing red against the cracked walls of Laura's small apartment. She clutched Jamal tightly, her breath ragged as the world outside felt hostile. Jamal whispered, "Mama, are they coming for us?" Laura trembled, whispering back, "Stay down, baby. Stay quiet." The third-floor window rattled as police cars screeched into the block, engines growling like beasts. Tyrone leaned against the couch, his fists tight, anger burning in his chest. He muttered, "They never stop hunting us." Laura looked at him sharply, her eyes carrying both fear and warning. She said, "Don't you dare step outside." The siren wailed louder, and the shadow of flashing lights painted every face with dread. Outside, neighbors screamed, doors slammed, and a gunshot cracked the night wide open. Laura closed her eyes, whispering, "Not again, Lord, not again." The smell of smoke drifted in, blending with the bitter stench of fear. Jamal buried his face against her, shaking. The sound of boots thundered on the stairs. Tyrone whispered, "It's starting." The system's grip had already reached their door. The morning sun offered no peace. Laura swept broken glass from the kitchen floor, her hands trembling. Jamal sat silently at the table, eyes red from crying all night. Tyrone leaned against the wall, his stare heavy, as though replaying every sound of chaos. Laura said, "This can't be life forever." Tyrone snapped, "It is unless we fight." Jamal whispered, "Mama, why do they hate us?" Laura paused, her chest tight. She answered softly, "Because they don't see us as human." Tyrone's fists slammed against the wall, leaving dust on his knuckles. Laura's eyes filled with quiet despair. The system's shadow lingered in every breath they took. The neighborhood buzzed with rumors about last night. Old men gathered on the corner, shaking heads in silence. Children whispered of shots and screams. Laura held Jamal's hand tightly, walking past boarded storefronts. Tyrone walked beside them, his jaw tense. A neighbor, Miss Evelyn, called out, "Laura, you can't keep raising him here like this." Laura forced a small smile. "Where else can we go?" Jamal glanced up at her, hearing the hopelessness in her voice. Tyrone muttered, "They want us trapped." Laura kept walking, the burden of survival pressing down with each step. That evening, Laura cooked beans in a dented pot, while Jamal did homework at the table. Tyrone paced restlessly, his anger boiling. He said, "I'm tired of running, tired of hiding." Laura replied, "You think fighting them makes it better?" Jamal looked between them nervously. Tyrone's voice rose, "We don't fight, we die anyway." Laura slammed the spoon down, eyes blazing. She said, "And if you die, what happens to us?" Silence filled the room, broken only by the ticking clock and the bubbling pot. The weight of survival hung heavier than the steam in the air. Night returned with its familiar dangers. The block outside filled with voices, laughter masking hidden tension. Tyrone leaned out the window, scanning the street, muttering, "They'll be back." Laura tucked Jamal into bed, whispering, "Dream safe, baby." Jamal asked, "Mama, will the lights flash again?" Laura forced a smile, stroking his hair, "Not tonight." Tyrone turned from the window, his eyes dark. He said, "We're one knock away from losing it all." Laura's chest tightened as she blew out the candle. Darkness swallowed the room, but the fear never left. The day started heavy with tension. Tyrone walked fast down cracked sidewalks, his eyes scanning every corner. Laura followed with Jamal, clutching his hand as if the ground itself could swallow him. Tyrone said, "We can't keep hiding from this." Laura replied, "We have Jamal to think about." Jamal tugged on her hand, whispering, "Mama, I'm scared of the sirens." Laura knelt, pulling him close. "Fear is natural, baby, but don't let it own you." Tyrone looked at them, his jaw stiff, and muttered, "Fear owns us every day." A group of young men leaned on the corner, their laughter hollow. One called out, Yo, Tyrone, they watching us. Tyrone's fists clenched, but Laura shook her head firmly. The air was thick with suspicion, each shadow a reminder that their lives were never fully theirs. Later that evening, Laura sat in the dim living room, folding clothes by candlelight. Jamal traced circles in his notebook, lost in thought. Tyrone leaned near the window, eyes locked on shadows outside. Laura broke the silence. This can't be his future. Tyrone answered sharply, "It already is, unless I change it." Jamal looked up and asked, "Change what, uncle?" Tyrone's face softened. "Change the way they treat us." Laura shook her head. "That fight will bury you." Tyrone clenched his jaw, staring harder into the night. His anger was more than fire. It was a wound that never healed. The next morning, Miss Evelyn stood on her stoop, calling to Laura as she passed. Miss Evelyn said, "Laura, the streets swallow boys like Tyrone." Laura stopped, her hand on Jamal's shoulder. She said, "He's stronger than that." Miss Evelyn sighed, "Strength don't stop bullets, child." Tyrone, a few steps ahead, turned back with narrowed eyes. He snapped, "I don't need warnings." Miss Evelyn lifted her chin. "You need wisdom." Laura squeezed Jamal's hand tighter, whispering, "Keep walking." The weight of elders' words lingered like ghosts, shadows of past generations warning the present. That night, Tyrone sat on the front steps, head bent low. Laura opened the door, whispering, "Come inside before trouble finds you." Tyrone didn't move. He said, "Trouble already lives here." Laura sat beside him, her voice trembling. "You're all Jamal has." Tyrone's eyes burned. "Then I need to make sure he has more than this." Laura whispered, "Don't let anger take you away from him." A long silence stretched between them, filled only by crickets and distant sirens. The stars above felt like silent witnesses to their pain. The following day, the mentor Marcus appeared, a presence that carried both weight and calm. He greeted Tyrone with a firm grip, saying, "Boy, your fire is loud, but your wisdom is quiet." Tyrone frowned. "What do you know about wisdom?" Marcus smiled faintly. "I know rage eats men alive." Laura stepped forward, relief washing her face. She said, "Marcus, talk sense into him." Jamal peeked from behind her, staring at Marcus with quiet admiration. Marcus leaned closer to Tyrone, his voice steady. "You want to fight the system, son? Learn its game first." Tyrone's chest rose and fell, anger wrestling with reason. The days blurred into restless nights, each filled with more whispers about Tyrone. Laura overheard two neighbors arguing outside, one saying, "He's trouble," the other insisting, "He's our voice." Inside, Jamal asked, "Uncle, why do people fight about you?" Tyrone stared at the floor, answering softly, "Because some people fear what they can't control." Laura's voice cracked as she said, "And some people don't survive that fear." The sound of distant sirens rose again, making Jamal flinch. Tyrone placed a hand on his shoulder, whispering, "I won't let them take me easy." Laura turned away, tears brimming in her eyes, whispering prayers into the silence. That night, Marcus returned, his footsteps heavy on the worn stairs. He greeted Tyrone firmly. "You think strength means fists, but real strength is patience." Tyrone snapped, "Patience gets us killed." Marcus shook his head. "No, impatience does." Laura, seated with Jamal on her lap, begged, "Please, Marcus, make him see." Jamal whispered, "Uncle, listen." Tyrone clenched his jaw, unwilling to yield. Marcus leaned closer, his voice stern. "The system wants you angry, because anger makes you reckless." Silence filled the room until Tyrone finally muttered, "Then what do I do?" Marcus sighed, "You fight smart, not loud." The following morning, the block was alive with tension. A police cruiser rolled slow down the street, eyes of officers locked on every door. Children playing froze in silence. Laura held Jamal close, whispering, "Stay near me." Tyrone stepped forward, muttering, "They want us afraid." An officer rolled the window down, staring long enough to send chills across the block. Miss Evelyn shouted from her stoop, "Leave these people alone." The officer smirked before driving off, but the damage was done. Fear tightened its grip again. Tyrone whispered, "This is the cage they built for us." That evening, Marcus invited Tyrone to walk with him. They sat on a bench under a flickering streetlight. Marcus said, "Your anger is fire, but fire without control burns everything." Tyrone leaned forward. "So you want me quiet?" Marcus replied, "No, I want you unbreakable." Tyrone clenched his hands, muttering, "Unbreakable gets you dead in these streets." Marcus sighed, "Or it gets you free." Laura watched from a window above, her heart torn between hope and dread. Jamal whispered beside her, "Mama, will Uncle listen?" Laura's voice was heavy. "I pray he does." Later that night, chaos erupted again. Shouts filled the block as police raided a nearby house. Laura yanked Jamal back from the window, whispering, "Don't look." Tyrone pressed against the glass, his eyes fierce. He muttered, "They'll keep doing this until someone stands up." Laura shouted, "And what if that someone dies?" Tyrone turned, anger shaking his frame. Then at least it meant something. Jamal cried quietly, clutching Laura. Marcus entered, raising his voice, "Stop letting them bait you." Silence fell, broken only by the smashing of doors outside. The night was alive with fear, and choice weighed heavy. The evening air was thick with silence when Laura discovered an envelope slipped under the door. She picked it up, hands trembling. Inside lay papers that revealed Tyrone's name tied to a crime he didn't commit. Laura gasped, whispering, "This is their trap." Tyrone grabbed the papers, his eyes narrowing as he read. He shouted, "They're setting me up." Jamal clutched Laura's side, asking, "Mama, what does it mean?" Laura's voice cracked, "It means they want to take your uncle away." Marcus entered, his face grim as he said, "They already wrote your fate, boy. You just found the script." Tyrone's chest heaved, torn between rage and fear. The block buzzed with rumors as whispers spread that Tyrone's name was in police files. Men on the corner debated loudly, some saying he was guilty, others insisting he was framed. Laura walked past with Jamal, her head low as the voices pierced her. Tyrone stood nearby, fists clenched, his eyes burning with fury. Marcus pulled him aside, saying, "The system always wins when you fight on their field." Tyrone snapped, "So what? I just let them bury me." Marcus answered, "You play smarter." Laura's voice broke, "And what about us while he's playing games?" Silence swallowed her words. That night, Laura confronted Tyrone in the kitchen. She slammed the papers down and shouted, "You promised me this wouldn't touch us." Tyrone's voice roared back, "I didn't choose this, they chose me." Jamal hid behind the wall, tears streaming as he listened. Laura cried, "I can't lose you to them." Tyrone's fists pounded the table, rattling dishes. He whispered, "Then tell me what choice I got." Silence stretched, broken only by Laura's sobs. Marcus entered slowly, his voice heavy. Sometimes survival is louder than revenge. Tyrone stared at him, rage and despair colliding in his chest. The next day, Marcus led Tyrone to a quiet park bench far from the block. Birds sang faintly, masking the heaviness between them. Marcus said, "You think the fight is theirs, but it's ours. We choose the field." Tyrone shook his head. "I don't see no field except the grave." Marcus leaned closer. "Then build your own ground." Tyrone stared at him, confused but listening. Marcus's voice softened, "Don't let their lies become your truth." Tyrone whispered, "But the streets already believe it." Marcus sighed. "The streets believe what they're fed. Stop feeding them." Tyrone looked away, lost. That evening, Laura found a letter slipped under the door again. This time, it held photographs, grainy images showing Tyrone near the scene of the crime. Laura gasped, shouting, "They're planting proof." Tyrone snatched the photos, his voice shaking. "They'll use this to cage me." Jamal cried, "Uncle, please don't go." Laura clutched him tight, her eyes filled with terror. Marcus entered slowly, his voice steady. "This is the turn, Tyrone. You either let them write your ending, or you change the story." Tyrone stared at the photographs, his breath ragged. The truth had twisted into a weapon, and the game had shifted. The night was restless as Tyrone paced the apartment floor, his hands shaking with rage. Laura sat at the table, her face buried in her palms. She whispered, "You're walking into their trap." Tyrone's voice cracked. "If I stay silent, they win." Jamal peeked from his bedroom whispering, "Uncle, please don't go out there." Marcus leaned against the wall, calm yet firm, saying, "Boy, storms don't calm by shouting louder." Tyrone spun around, his eyes wet. "What do you expect me to do, Marcus? Sit and watch while they destroy us?" Laura lifted her head, tears staining her cheeks. "I expect you to live." Silence filled the room as the weight of survival pressed down on them. The following morning, Tyrone walked down the block, his body tense as whispers followed him. Laura trailed behind with Jamal, her face drawn with worry. Miss Evelyn called out, "Tyrone, don't let them bait you." Tyrone snapped, "I'm already their target." Jamal tugged Laura's arm, whispering, "Everyone's staring, Mama." Laura hushed him gently, "Keep walking." Marcus caught up, gripping Tyrone's shoulder, saying, "They're pushing you into a fight you can't win." Tyrone glared at him, his voice low. "Then I'll make sure they bleed trying." The block buzzed with unease, every neighbor watching silently from porches and windows. That evening, Laura cooked in silence, her hands trembling as the pot simmered. Tyrone stood at the window, scanning the street, his fists clenched. Jamal sat at the table, his voice trembling. "Uncle, are they really coming for you?" Tyrone turned, forcing a smile. "They've been coming for me my whole life." Laura slammed the spoon down, saying, "Don't you dare make this sound noble." Marcus walked in, his tone heavy. "Noble or not, it's truth." Laura's eyes burned as she shouted, "Truth doesn't keep families together." Tyrone whispered, "Neither does fear." The room fell into silence, the air thick with pain. Later that night, Marcus sat Tyrone down on the porch steps, his tone sharp. Marcus said, "You keep fighting shadows, but the real enemy wears a suit." Tyrone frowned, "You mean the cops?" Marcus shook his head. "No, the ones who send them." Laura appeared in the doorway, holding Jamal's hand. She said, "And what happens if Tyrone doesn't make it back?" Marcus sighed. "Then he becomes another lesson." Jamal's eyes filled with tears, whispering, "I don't want lessons, I want my uncle." Tyrone's chest rose and fell, torn between anger and love, his silence louder than words. The block erupted the next day when police swarmed again, searching doors. Tyrone stepped forward, fury in his eyes. Laura screamed, "Don't!" but his voice cut through the noise. "I won't hide anymore." Jamal clung to Laura, sobbing, "Please stop him." Marcus rushed in, grabbing Tyrone's arm, shouting, "Think before you leap." Tyrone ripped free, his voice trembling, "I can't breathe in this cage." Neighbors watched from windows, whispering prayers. Laura collapsed to her knees, her voice breaking, "Lord, don't take him from us." The scene burned with fear, love, and rage, the storm before the climax. The courtroom was filled with tension as Tyrone stood at the defense table, chains clinking softly. Laura sat behind him, clutching Jamal's hand tightly. The judge's gavel struck, echoing through the chamber. Laura whispered, "Stay strong." Tyrone turned slightly, his eyes burning with defiance. "I was born strong." Marcus leaned forward from the bench, whispering, "Don't let their lies shake you." The prosecutor smirked, laying out photographs on the table as evidence. Jamal's voice quivered, "Mama, are they taking him away?" Laura kissed his head, tears sliding down her face, whispering, "Not without a fight." The prosecutor's voice cut like glass, painting Tyrone as violent and dangerous. Laura gripped Jamal tighter as murmurs filled the courtroom. Tyrone slammed his hand on the table, shouting, "That's a lie!" Judge Richard roared, "Order in the court." Marcus leaned closer, whispering, "Control yourself, boy." Tyrone's chest heaved, rage simmering under restraint. Laura whispered desperately, "Please, don't let them break you." Jamal pressed his face into her side, whispering, "Mama, I'm scared." The silence that followed felt heavier than any verdict, as the weight of the system pressed on every breath. Marcus rose from the gallery and spoke boldly, requesting to testify. Judge Richard eyed him coldly but allowed it. Marcus walked with steady steps, his voice calm but heavy. "This boy is not what they claim." He told of Tyrone's sacrifices, the nights he shielded Jamal, the work he did for neighbors. Laura wept quietly, whispering, "Thank you." Jamal looked up, eyes wide with hope. Tyrone's fists unclenched, his breathing slowing as Marcus continued. "The system fears voices like his because they remind us of truth." Silence washed over the courtroom as Marcus's words struck deep. The prosecutor sneered, striking back with venom. He waved the photos, shouting, "Proof speaks louder than stories." Tyrone's jaw tightened as Laura sobbed harder. Marcus stood firm, answering, "Fabricated proof is still a lie." Judge Richard banged his gavel, silencing the room. Jamal whispered, "Mama, is Uncle losing?" Laura hugged him close, "Not if truth holds." Tyrone rose, his voice breaking through, "I am not guilty. I am a man they fear because I won't bow." His words rang across the courtroom, leaving silence so thick it seemed to swallow every sound. The climax erupted as chaos swept the courtroom. Tyrone shouted, "You will not cage me with lies." Officers rushed forward, but Marcus stepped between them, his voice thunderous, "Let him speak." Judge Richard roared for order, slamming his gavel furiously. Laura screamed, "Please, don't take him." Jamal cried, clinging to her tightly. Tyrone's chest heaved as he declared, "I fight for every voice you silence." The room froze, all eyes locked on him. For one raw moment, truth cut through the weight of oppression, a spark of defiance burning against the system's grip. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving a heavy silence. Tyrone sat at the defense table, his chains removed, but the weight still heavy on his shoulders. Laura approached him, whispering, "You spoke truth even if they tried to bury it." Tyrone met her eyes. "Truth doesn't always set you free, but it makes them listen." Jamal rushed forward, hugging him tightly. "Uncle, you're still here." Marcus stood behind them, his face tired but proud, saying, "You didn't bow, boy. That matters." Judge Richard looked on from the bench, unmoved, but his silence carried acknowledgement. For once, the system hesitated. Outside the courthouse, crowds had gathered, voices clashing in anger and support. Some shouted that Tyrone was guilty, others that he was framed. Laura shielded Jamal as cameras flashed. Tyrone raised his hands, shouting, "I am not your criminal, I am your mirror." Marcus stood close, whispering, "You turned their stage into your own." Reporters pressed forward, microphones thrusting, but Tyrone's words cut through them all. Laura's heart pounded, torn between pride and fear. Jamal clung to her, whispering, "He's brave, Mama." She nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes, but bravery is costly." That night, back in the neighborhood, the block buzzed with divided voices. Some praised Tyrone's courage, others warned it would bring more heat. Miss Evelyn approached Laura, saying, "You raised him strong, but strength draws fire." Laura whispered, "He was never mine to control." Jamal tugged her arm, pointing at Tyrone, speaking with neighbors. Tyrone said, "We either live bent or stand tall. I made my choice." Marcus leaned on the stoop, nodding with approval. The streetlights flickered above them, casting long shadows, as though the block itself was deciding whether to curse him or carry him. Later, Laura sat by Jamal's bedside, stroking his hair as he whispered, "Will Uncle always fight?" She kissed his forehead, whispering, "He fights so you won't have to." Tyrone stood quietly at the door, his face softened by the glow of the lamp. Marcus stepped inside, murmuring, "Every battle leaves scars, but scars tell stories." Laura's eyes met Tyrone's, filled with both fear and love. She said, "Don't let the system steal you from him." Tyrone nodded silently, his heart heavier than words. Jamal drifted into sleep, unaware of the war that still loomed outside their fragile walls. The final night was quiet, the block bathed in the glow of streetlights. Tyrone walked alone down the cracked sidewalk, his breath visible in the cold air. He stopped at the corner, looking back at the apartment window where Laura and Jamal watched silently. He raised his hand, not in farewell, but in defiance. Marcus's voice echoed in his memory. Unbreakable doesn't mean unscarred. Tyrone whispered to himself. They can't silence me. His shadow stretched long against the pavement, swallowed by the darkness, but the fire in his eyes burned bright. The fight wasn't over, but neither was his will.